Sometimes it's felt like just throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks, because I want to sometimes have a strategy, and then sometimes strategy can feel inauthentic. And so I'm always trying to balance this. I want to share what I'm excited about or what I think is really helpful or what I've been learning. And then if people don't know it exists, I can't help them. So then I have to balance this. I need some strategy to get exposure so that I can help the most people.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Healthy Business Lab podcast, where we interview awesome allied health business owners to share their insights, learnings, and knowledge with us and with our fellow business owners in the same space. And so today I'm extremely excited to introduce Marie Vakakis from the Therapy Hub. Welcome to the podcast, Marie.
Thanks for having me.
So, I'd love for you to share a bit of an introduction about yourself, your background and your expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. I am an accredited mental health social worker and couple and family therapist, and I set out to create a business by accident, I guess. I'm in lockdown like a few people, and now I have a group private practice called the Therapy Hub. And then I also have my own business through training and consultancy and supervision. My main expertise is in working with adolescents and families and trying to create an environment that's not super sterile, that's a little bit more relaxed and fun to come to, with some really amazing qualified staff who also like to think about the system and the whole family around the young person. But we also work with adults. We have neurodiversity affirming assessments. We run training and workshops and events for parents and external organizations as well.
Love that. So many cool things that we'll can touch into over the course of our chat here. Also, I'd like to kick off with a chat is also around sharing some of that expertise and the mental health side of things. It's front and foremost. I love it on your website. You share that idea. Well, everybody has mental health. That's the same as physical health, and we look after that. And so as a business owner, we often don't look after ourselves that well. So I'd love for you to share a few little sort of insights of things that you've experienced, you've seen, and even for yourself coming from the expertise that you have around good mental health for business owners as well.
That's really tricky. I remember there used to be a saying that floats around, like, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And then I saw someone write a meme that if you love what you do and you're self-employed, you do it all the time. It does feel like that. At points, the lines are blurred between what's a hobby, what's work, especially with sometimes a real pull to document things for social media. It's almost felt like all parts of my life are possible. Could have been pieces of content, or if I'm doing an art class, should I write a post about the benefits of art for well-being? So because we all have mental health and we are all in relationships, doesn't mean like an intimate partner, but it felt like every single part of my life could be a potential story or learning opportunity or something to share, and that became actually really quite overwhelming. It got to the point where sometimes for weeks at a time, I'd have to delete all social media off my phone. And then I'd feel guilty because I think of some of the marketing books that I've read, especially like around like Gary Vee stuff of like, just document as you learn. I'm like, oh, for goodness sakes. It does consume a lot of brain space. And I don't know if I've got the balance right yet of trying to figure out how to do that. I'm very active. I have an active commute, so I walk or ride to work when I can. I go to the gym often. I'm recovering from an injury at the moment, so I can't do that. But a lot of that stuff does help. But even then, I'm listening to podcasts on my way to work. I'm listening to audiobooks at the gym. I haven't found quite that sweet spot yet of the not learning bit. But I feel well, I sleep, I eat well, I exercise my body, I get a lot of comfort and enjoyment out of peer supervision and groups and things like that. So it does consume a large part of my life, and I don't know exactly what I would give up, because I also really like some parts of that too.
Awesome. I love it. Again, a great interesting perspective of that, of the intertwining of business and life, where we had some other guests sort of mention that same idea, but you're linking that how we often think like everything we do in life actually can be for the business as well. And having that awareness, I think, is as much a bigger thing. And I guess the fact that you're actually conscious of it, no doubt does help you be a bit more mindful of that, so that you do have those moments of being able to at least name it. I was learning something the other night, and somebody was talking about just name it to tame it. And I was like, that rung quite well. So even you doing what you've just done, it's kind of like, I've named it, I have the ability to tame it, it's aware of it. It might always just be there, but I'm at least conscious of it.
Yeah, it can be tricky because it's not just in business. I think having maybe the background I do in social work and mental health, even when I worked elsewhere, I couldn't not see it out and about. Like I couldn't not see systemic injustice. I couldn't not see poverty or racism. I couldn't not see political disasters as being directly related to the work that I do. There was a level of awareness that comes with studying and learning about things that impact people and being a highly empathic person and feeling really big feelings, really like all feelings so big. It was hard not to see that when I worked with people with substance addiction. Every new bottle shop that would open up, it would make me think, oh, is this because it's a low socioeconomic area and it's overpopulated with bottle shop? Like I couldn't not see all these pieces kind of working around. I always found that hard to switch off. And so some of it got targeted into different advocacy work in different times or different works within organisation around training or practice groups or fundraisers. I had to use that energy for something. And now that it's more relational and mental health, that's my focus. I use that for the podcast. It fuels a lot of the content for the podcast, This Complex Life. I'm starting up Inside Social Work again to educate other people. I get to have an outlet, I guess, to target that than just spinning around feeling helpless.
At the end of the day, it's finding the fuel. We keep that going. But again, and seeing where that's gone, I'd love for you to now share, and you touched upon a few avenues there from the business side of things. You're a little bit of a fell into it, which so many of us business owners, we do in different ways, chance or happen chance or opportunity knocks. And it's like, well, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And you sort of share how that actually happened and some of those early experiments you did when you sort of started out on your business journey. I'd love to hear some of those early stories.
I probably was curious about it to begin with. I was working in someone else's practice and I love to learn. And so there wasn't a lot of, at the time, resources around how to do therapy in a private practice setting, especially Australian based. Like it wasn't very common. There weren't a lot of online resources or webinars. I was listening to quite a few podcasts from the US and they always talked about private practice and then the business side. So there was clinical outcomes, how to do different therapeutic techniques, how to deliver them, which most people, that's the bit we already know usually. Sometimes adapting that to various models, like within the Medicare constraints or within an NDIS framework. There's a learning curve of how to deliver the service and manage some of those external factors. And there were constant kind of conversations around budgeting or finance or saving, putting money aside for tax. It's when I first heard of the profit first model. So I went and read that. There were these little bits along the way that kind of planted little seeds. And so when I did make the jump into solo practice, and then I had my first contractor come on board, I wasn't starting from zero knowledge. I sort of had consumed content. One of my favorite podcasts at the time was Selling the Couch. And I've been on that a couple of times actually, which has been really fun to have listened to it from episode 1 and then be a guest. It gave me an idea of what I didn't know and where I needed to go to get that and what support I could put in place to learn everything from organizational, like structural policies, procedures, frameworks, getting a lawyer to write up a good contract, understanding how far out GST, still that's baffling, and just building up slowly from there. But at the core of it was the first contractor I brought on. It was to service a particular client. There was a conflict of interest in that relationship for me to work with them. And so I picked a person who I'm like, if I could see a therapist, it would have been this person. And then from there, the team grew and we've had probably over time about 20 different staff members come through. The ones that have left have all gone to start their own businesses and are all self-employed, which is pretty exciting. And now there's a team of about, I think, 6 or 7 of us here at the Therapy Hub.
I love that. The insights there as well. Doing the education, and obviously you're a voracious learner there. You're already learning stuff. So it didn't actually feel like a huge jump. Again, when you actually hit the ground running and things happen, you're always aware of that. You've got a foundation of knowledge there, sitting there and moving through that growth cycle or the evolution of your team there. I'd love to hear any insights around how you've worked with team. You set up on your first hire was very much around who would I like to see. That's a great way to go. Well, I want the best. How can I find these people? But the subsequent team members you brought on, what experiments, I guess, or what have you found with the learnings along the way of evolving and growing a team?
That was probably my steepest learning curve because under the contractor model, it's business to business relationship. So there has to be a level of, I'm not their boss, but they are employed under my brand. And so having, I guess, the same values around, and we talk a lot in the interview around why they've chosen us, why do they think they'll be a good fit, and vice versa. We make sure that people can work with the queer community, that the neurodiversity affirming, that they have experience with certain frequent presentations, because that's our reputation, that we want to make sure all the team members have a similar way of approaching and working with certain community members. And then it's then trying to refine, it's not necessarily mentorship, but it can be, but sometimes there's supervision, but it's also their own business, so they also have responsibility to do that on their own. And so it actually just requires lots of conversations and navigating, and each person, especially if they're at the start of their career, might need a little bit more support. Others are quite happy to come in for a couple of days a week, go home and not think of us again until they come back the week after. It's actually trying to reduce any preconceived expectations and ideas I had. And look, I would have loved that dream clinic of everyone has the same work days, and we have big team lunches. And I mean, I'm a social person, so that sounds like a dream. For someone else, they're like, what a nightmare. I cannot stand the idea of having a team lunch. Yeah, that was my dream, was to have this big team and have on-site trainings and collaborations. And without the funding to do that, it's impossible in private paid. It's expecting people to do it outside paid hours, or we have to charge clients, double, because the overheads are so great that it doesn't quite, what clients pay and what we get paid, it's not the same. And I think that's a big misconception as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that is obviously across allied health and many of the different modalities as well. These different setups and frameworks between the contractor model versus the employee, so to speak, and again, multimodality practices as well, then have quite often a mix between. And so obviously pointing that out for somebody that maybe you can fully think about that idea of the owner, if their contractor is not can't control what they do, but they need to work under the brand. It's definitely something very interesting to navigate. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's great. And I guess other experiments as you've grown and evolved, you've already mentioned a couple of times, sort of the podcast and the like. You've definitely had the personal branding side of things, something that you look as though you have done quite a bit with, and you're working in that space of building a personal brand?
Sometimes it's felt like just throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks, because I want to sometimes have a strategy, and then sometimes strategy can feel inauthentic. And so I'm always trying to balance this. I want to share what I'm excited about or what I think is really helpful or what I've been learning. And then if people don't know it exists, I can't help them. So then I have to balance this. I need some strategy to get exposure so that I can help the most people. And that's always a real struggle. Like, I spent a significant amount of time creating my parenting program, Connected Teens, that fuses together a couple of well-researched and well-known therapies. So we've got acceptance and commitment therapy and Bowen family systems therapy. And it's the kind of program that if a lot of the parents that saw me with their kids had done, they might not have needed to come and see me. So I was like, great, what amazing value for the cost of less than 2 sessions. They can do this course and they won't need me. And selling that is so much harder than I expected. I was like, why wouldn't people want to do this? If I had something that would fix this problem, I would do it. But then sometimes I think I'm so fatigued with online courses. I just want someone to just do it for me or show me how to do it myself in one-on-one. Then there's that. So there's always this kind of struggle between marketing, sales, which essentially I can't help people if they don't know I exist. And that's really tricky because I believe in the product, and whether it's one of the online courses or just therapy. But then I also need to caveat, it's not a panacea for everything. It can help some people sometimes, or a lot of people a lot of the time, but not each therapist will help each person with all the things that they want. And so there's this then trying to myth bust some of that. So then some of the content I create is to myth bust that, to myth bust even, do I need to see a psychologist? What's a mental health social worker? What about family therapist, art therapist? It's hard to try and dispel misinformation that really affects your industry, but then also really wanting to provide valuable learning, I guess. That's where the personal brand and the therapy hub have slightly different audiences. One's to teach people. It's the online digital, anything that's workshop or based, and then the therapy hub is, sit on the couch and we talk.
Let's get it done. Yeah, and I love that. You spelled out yourself just at the end there. It's like the personal brand being a very educational purpose, puts you in a position of you are a person that has great information, you're able to share it. And again, the people that resonate with your approach, your style, and those sorts of things, there's opportunities for them to access that content in a way that you have productized and the like. There also is actually the flow-on effect through to the practice as well for those that kind of go, actually, I just want to talk to that person. And you see that quite a bit. Some people sort of seeing you from the educational content and then flowing through, and how is that sort of played out over time?
Definitely does mean sometimes there's bottlenecks of people wanting just me because I'm that visible voice. So that has its own challenges. But also maybe the urgency people will listen to, like I had someone recently listen to a podcast episode like, yeah, you nailed it. That's our exact issue. Can we see you now? I'm like, I'm unavailable for several months. Like, oh, well, this just can't wait. It's like, I get that. And I'm still unavailable for several months. And so then there can be that deflating, defeated thing that people have where they might feel a bit of a parasocial relationship or have connected with me and I don't know them at all. And they might come in knowing all this stuff about how I work or me and I know nothing about them. So that can have its own interesting perspectives too, where especially if I bump into other social workers at conferences, sometimes and I don't have a wide audience. It's only, a few hundred people listen to each episode, but someone will be like, oh, I love when he said this and he said that. I'm like, hi, I'm Marie. Nice to meet you. I don't know you.
You don't know you, and I've forgotten a little bit of that because I've shared so much content all the time. Yeah. So how do you manage that? I'm curious around that. That's, again, great insights because it is for somebody like yourself. You share, you're very social and you want to know those people on the other end of it as well. How do you approach sort of those situations?
Well, they've all been positive interactions so far, and I'm always open to feedback. One of the Therapy Hub's values is connect, grow, and discover. And I think I will get it wrong. There'll be something I say that then will be updated or changed. Or I just did a little video on Neurodiversity Celebration Week and how what I was explicitly taught at university 20 years ago has been flipped on its head and completely changed now. So if I had done a video then and someone resurfaced it and said, look what you said this, this and this, I would be like, yeah, and that's what I knew to be right then. And so as people, if we have these robust conversations, and I mean, the podcast is called This Complex Life. And I'm talking about that things aren't simple. They're not black and white. They're not a meme. They're not a one-off phrase. It requires dialogue. So if someone comes and has a constructive dialogue, like, oh, you've overlooked this part or you could have done that different, great. I can update my database, my learning, and then go and create something. So that I welcome. And most of the time, people have it's just been really nice for them to share what their favorite episode was or what resonated with them so that I know it's helping people. Because I don't like listening to the sound of my own voice. That's actually the worst bit, having to do some of the editing and listen to your own voice back. It's in trying to share a message or try and share some learnings and sometimes things that, maybe I found this so amazing and just can't wait for other people to learn it too. I usually quite like it when people reach out and say, I heard this, I liked it, or this resonated, or actually this person might be a really good person to interview. Yeah, keep doing it, people, if you're out and about. I'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn or Instagram.
And hopefully off the back of this, we get some more viewers and we'll put all the contact details on the show notes, which we'll grab at the end and the like. But again, leading through to what you were just sort of saying, some of the conversations you've had both with people that are coming through from the podcast realm or the online course or like, and some of those case studies or feedback testimonials and through to the one-on-one type of clients. I'd love to hear some of those, any of those transformations that have stood out where you've had the chat or you've had the feedback where people have gone from A to B with their mental health and the like.
Yeah, let me just get up. I've got my spreadsheet of testimonials just because I was actually working on something else. And not.
You're saying you're about to go on a bit of a break. You're cramming so much in. You've got so much going on at the moment. No doubt plenty of sheets open.
Yeah. I think I'm just looking at some of the feedback of some of the parenting courses, but things like I've learned to expand my mind and prepare to deal with teenagers in an effective and caring way. I've learned to take a better approach and how to coach emotions. In the last few weeks, we've seen a change in behaviors and had fewer arguments due to the strategies offered. Those things are amazing. I think my favorite was one of the courses, a parent brought me a bunch of flowers and a card. And I was like, that is so kind. She's like, yeah, my daughter said to give this to you because I'm less angry now. She's like, I don't know where you're going every Tuesday, but you're less angry now. And it was so funny that the daughter had already noticed the change. And the mum brought me a card and some flowers on my last day. And I love that because It's very,
So simple, so powerful, and effective.
yeah, I probably have a photo of it somewhere, but it absolutely made my
Yeah.
day. It was so sweet.
That's brilliant how long ago that was. You were on the video here for listeners that see the video. You can see the body language of Marie there. It's literally lit her up. And again, that's why we do what we do. It's why you do what you do and the like. So what we talk about here and trying to share information and knowledge and stories and allied health business owners out there creating these transformations, doing more of building sustainable, profitable businesses and the like so that we can have this impact. Thank you for sharing those insights today. Any other, I want to hear if you've got another little case study there that sticks out of mine because I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah. Case study, not so much, but as you were saying around transformation, I think that's also been part of the challenge is we can get really fixed and focused on how long it's taken us to build these skills. And sometimes our clients don't give a shit. They don't care that you've studied for 10 years or 20. They want to know what's in it for them. How are they going to be better or happier or healthier? And so I think of some of the ways I've adjusted my business have been based on services I've had that haven't gone well. And I still find it very frustrating when I go to a physio or osteo for an injury and they say, okay, so just come back when you need to see me again. I'm like, well, when do I need to see you again? What should I do in the meantime? What's my treatment plan? What's actually wrong? How do I prevent it happening? And I think sometimes as therapists, maybe when there's money exchange and we're very aware of that, we can be like, okay, so just come back when you want. And they're like, well, when do I need it? Really trying to understand what the person wants, why they're there, and then come up with a way to assess that and have a treatment plan. And depending on your modality, you'll have different theories that help you with your formulation of what that looks like, and then sharing that with the person and figuring it out together. Because if you're like, oh, well, the severity of your presenting issue is actually probably going to take weekly work for a year, and they're like, yeah, nah, I'm not doing that. I just want this thing here to be okay and then go about my day. You're going to have a rupture there. They're going to feel like maybe things are moving too slow, and you're like, I don't know why they just have stopped coming. And trying to figure out that it's a constant challenge. It's a struggle for a lot of us. I still fluctuate sometimes with that and trying to figure out, what do you need? What are you expecting of me? How does my skills and expertise help you? And are we focusing on the right thing, or is that serving as a distraction? And so when you can get that right, we get that more enthusiastic buy-in and people are really aware of what to expect. And that doesn't always go well. Sometimes I've had families where they're like, no, we don't want family therapy. We don't need your help. Just fix them. They're the problem. And then when I try and be like, well, I actually want the whole family in because how you're reacting or responding impacts the young person, which then exacerbates the exact thing you're trying to reduce. Sometimes they've just gone and found someone else who will just diagnose, label, medicate, and problem solved for now. Sometimes that's hard when there's different agendas, and sometimes it can work really, really well. But I would encourage people, if you're listening as a consumer, don't give up. If you've just had one therapist that you didn't like, try another one. It's not one size fits all. That's definitely not the approach. I think there was an episode of Ted Lasso where he went to a therapist once and didn't like it, and he was having a conversation with Coach Beard, who's like, and what did you say? He's like, not all people are the same. People's like, oh yeah, they're not all the same. You gotta go find a different one.
So true. And I love that from both the practitioner level and the consumer sort of level, managing expectations and having a plan and actually just sharing that. At least, like, I think that's a lot of things because we often will have a plan in place and we know it because, again, we've had the experience, we've had the expertise, we've had the skills and the like, but people don't know that unless we actually share that as well. And then people can opt in or out of that. Like you've said, again, some people kind of go, well, hey, that's not for me, and they want the quick fix or whatever it is. Being conscious of that from, you talked at the very start of the call, interesting, about having strategy and not. It's not it's kind of the in-between step. So at least we've got a plan. You don't necessarily need the full-blown strategy. So there's a bit of an outline of a plan that we can always tweak, modify, and that's why we sort of use the terminology around experiments. We can experiment with that. And if we're thinking of it in that way, that can only be a win-win situation.
But even that, I would still be encouraging people to overt that, because even if you're saying, look, after 3 sessions, I'm still getting to know the client, so I've got nothing to assess or tell them, that's the bit you can tell them. You say, look, the first 3 sessions, we're still getting to know each other. I'm going to ask you some questions. Some might seem completely random. Some might land us somewhere. I'm trying to piece together the best way to work together. Let's bear with me. You're not going to feel immediately better because I haven't actually done any therapy with you yet, but it's just how I work. So even just overting that, or if you're a person who's like, I like to send you 17 forms to complete at home, and then we go through those results together, then say that too, because each person, I mean, I've had a dozen therapists in my life, and every single one did something completely different. And so even as a therapist, I go in there and I'm like, how do you do what you do? And how do you do what you do is going to help me with what I want. How do we figure this out? Because not everyone does the same thing. There's no perfect structure. Getting comfortable overting that and asking questions, I suppose.
Well, I love that. And for me, that's a great way to round off the chat today. At the end of the day, asking questions on both sides of the fence, it actually just helps. If we ask questions, we get information, we get knowledge, and therefore knowledge is power, knowledge is key, and then we can actually make decisions on what's best for us at the end of the day. Thank you for sharing. And as I said during the chat there, if people do want to find you, we'll include in the show notes a bunch of details that we've already got there, but feel free to share here as to the main places where you hang out, where people can connect with you.
Yes. So on LinkedIn is probably my most comfortable platform. That's where I post a lot of content that's related to both businesses, I suppose, around educating other people and then also helping with their own understanding of mental health and relationships. And on Instagram is a lot more about this Complex Life podcast. Check out the podcast. It's all on the Marie Vakakis website or Spotify, iTunes, all the podcast places, and then the therapyhub.com.au for therapy. And we do offer telehealth. We can do international. There's just a few countries that based on our insurance we can't do, but yeah, nationwide if people want. Telehealth is always an option too.
Awesome. And once again, we'll put all those links in the show notes for you. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge, expertise, insights, and the learnings that you're paying forward, all the many things that you've learned over the years to this point. And thank you for sharing that with our audience today.
No worries. Thanks, Craig.
Awesome. So that's over and out from another episode from the Healthy Business Lab podcast. Like, subscribe, do all those sorts of things, and we'll see you on the next episode. Catch you later. Thank you for listening to the Healthy Business Lab podcast. Make sure you subscribe to keep up to date with all the latest episodes.